double click a little bit on the discover process. You know, it's really the unknown unknowns. Like when you go in to talk to a customer, you have a list of questions and areas that you want to, of course, understand. But there's so many other things that you don't know you have to learn. So you've got to keep that, you know, curiosity. You've got to have that interest to really understand what the customers are saying. If I were to give you a few techniques, if you look at the research process, to begin with, there's primary research. Primary is when you're actually connecting with the customers. Secondary research is what you can find on the World Wide Web. As far as methodologies are concerned, there are lots of techniques to understand people, and everyone is going to be different. So they're both convergent as well as divergent techniques, right? You want to get a lot of information, but then you want to start to narrow down on what really makes sense to you. And finally, as far as techniques are concerned, most of us feel, sorry about that, most of us feel that, you know, going and talking to the customer is the best way to understand their issues. But that's not the only technique. You want to do a lot of observation, and more than asking questions, you want to listen. So we think the 3 key techniques, of course, this is just a quick you know, set of tools that we use for secondary research. But really, on primary, what you want to do is you want to ask a lot of open-ended questions. It's not about, hey, you know what, travel is a problem for you, isn't it? If I ask you that question, you're likely to say yes. Another big challenge that we see is that human beings were generally nice to each other. And we talk about, if I were to ask you, hey, you know what, do you like tea or coffee? You're going to choose one of those. But in fact, when I'm not observing you, when you're at home, you might actually prefer a beer, or you might actually prefer juice. So the options we give you, sometimes those multiple choice, actually confuses the customer, and they choose out of the options you've given rather than tell you what they really do. The other thing is, if you were to ask me, hey, Deepa, how do you start your day? Let's say you were trying to build you know, some sort of technology or solution to manage my time more efficiently. If you came and asked me, hey, how do you handle your day? I would say, look, I start my morning off with looking at my calendar to see what all I have to do. I make a list. I have a to-do list. I use that on Evernote, where I have all of my tasks that I need to do, and I highlight things that I have to do that particular day. And you know, I spend the rest of my time prepping for the meetings, making sure I have all of the information that I have for my client interactions or specific you know, meetings where I have to provide updates. Was that a plane? Okay. And this is what I would tell you. If you ask me to show you my Evernote, are we being raided or something? If you were to ask me to show you my Evernote, I would show it to you. It would be updated fairly recently. But if you came and observed me, Kavita would probably be calling me saying, hey, Deepa, there's a problem on this project. You've got to come in. We need your help. Handle this. I'm probably running late. So what I said about me preparing for meetings, being thoughtful, goes out the window, and I'm running in reactive mode. Why do you think that happens? I said I do this, but what I actually do is something completely different. Why do you think that is? Any guesses? Yeah. Sorry? You want to feel? Organized. Yeah. Got it. So you want to present a view that you know what you're doing and you're in control. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. But outside of that, what happens is we speak in the form of intention, not real behavior. And it's just not me, it's every human being. We speak in the form of what we desire to do, versus what we really do. So if that's the case, when you go in and ask questions, they're going to tell you more of, you know, whatever they expect, what they think you expect them to say, or what they intend to do versus what they really do. So what's the point of that interview, isn't it? So asking open-ended questions that don't result in yes or no. Asking, following up, so tell me how this happens. Walk me through a day in your life. That helps you understand far more than shooting questions like a survey, right? The other thing that we believe is really important is listening skills. We have this technique, we write down 90-10 on a sheet of paper every time we go in to talk to customers. And basically that means we have to talk 10% of the time, and our customers are speaking 90% of the time. It's really important to do that. You're there to understand, and yet, if you listen to just the amount of bandwidth your voice is using versus the customer, you'll be surprised as to how much you speak versus the customer. So this is like a quick tip to just ensure that you're asking short, open-ended questions and really allowing the person to tell you versus you tell the person what they think, what you think they do. Paraphrasing. Often you misunderstand what people say. To play it back and to really listen to what they're saying and asking follow-up questions. But for us, the most important technique is that of observation. So I'll tell you about a recent research that we were doing at Pensaar where we were talking to small and medium businesses. This was at a pharmacy. And we were trying to understand how they manage their inventory, how they do their customer connections. It was a pharmacy that was opposite a hospital. And he said, before we went in, he said, hey, you know what, I'm a little busy, do you mind hanging out to the side and waiting? We loved that. What we were doing was we were observing what he was doing, not in a creepy way. Of course, we were just standing out from the side and observing. Then we asked him to walk us through how he manages his customers, how he manages his inventory. And luckily for us, he got interrupted again and asked us to wait off on the side. What we were doing was observing. And I can't tell you how useful that was because we were able to ask him questions. Like, he never told us about inventory, unsold inventory that was already expired. He didn't tell us about that at all. But we noticed that there were little plastic bags in the corner with medicine in it that he handed out to a distributor that walked in. He told us every time he doesn't have a medicine, that's when he writes it down in his book, and when the distributor comes in, he would ask for that medicine. We saw that sometimes he was writing it down, sometimes he wasn't. So we were able to follow up and ask questions and say, why was that so? Being curious, doing a combination of asking open-ended questions, listening, and observation really are the trick. Now, there's several techniques that are in play, but I won't confuse you with that. It's all a combination of using your open-ended questions, your listening, and your observation.